Hey, gang. John Cantera, the Double Broker Bounty Hunter here. Thanks for joining us. We are rebooting our fraud prevention series that we have out there. And we're going to do this every few months because everyone knows that fraud is constantly shifting in this environment. And as new scams show up, we will come back out and update all of our information to make sure that we have the most up-to-date stuff available on our website and on our YouTube channel, etc. So we are rebooting the entire series, and today we're going to start back over with part one. Uh, Special thanks to our sponsor, AccuBid Pro, for everything they do to help us produce these videos. Um, if you are a carrier and you don't know what your costs are, you are in serious trouble. You can help manage your costs a lot better with AccuBid Pro.
Do you know your cost per mile? Have you been hitting your profit margins? Do you struggle with bidding in a way that is both profitable and competitive? Would it be worth it to have all this information right in front of you? By calculating your cost per mile, AccuBid Pro helps you stay profitable in an industry still struggling to recover. In order to calculate your cost per mile, AccuBid Pro asks you questions about your business expenses. Our goal is to help you understand what you need to keep operating in order to keep up with the game and maintain your business. Enter your origin and destination, and we show you what you should bid based on your personal cost per mile in order to be profitable, even including a more detailed breakdown of each bid. Download the app today and get your 30-day free trial of AccuBid Pro, available on the App Store and Google Play. Bid smarter, bid faster, bid better with AccuBid Pro.
So let's go ahead and get into this. We like to start off with talking about the basics of double brokering, because for those who don't know, double brokering is the root of all evil when it comes to fraud in the transportation industry. Everything starts with double brokering, whether it's cargo theft, cargo ransoming, non-payment. It all ends up starting with the double brokering phenomenon that we're dealing with today. So let's go ahead and break down the basics of double brokering. And this is the bare bones basics. We're going to get deeper into it in upcoming weeks as we get into future parts. Forgot to mute my phone. Always important to do that when you're going live. Sorry about that. All right, so let's get into this. Double brokering is basically when a carrier illegally passes a load onto another carrier without the broker's knowledge. At least that was the bare basics idea early on when double brokering was a thing. You look back into the law, and we're talking more about in 2012, you had basically, you didn't have the flood of international guys that are doing bad things that you have out there today. That's really the thing that has precipitated all the bad stuff that's going on, is this flood of international organizations who are really trying to do additional harm in this industry. So that brings us to the definition as it evolved in 2023, where you have fraudulent entities that are digging in, and frankly, not just international, but domestic also, who deal with transferring loads. And it's frankly not just entities that are either our brokers or carriers or impersonating brokers or carriers, but you also have unethical dispatch services who are doing bad things, and even unethical carriers. So it's really about the intent of the law, and the intent is to prevent the rebrokering of freight between one carrier or another without the broker's authority. Now, this kind of blurs lines a little bit when you talk about co-brokering, so we're not going to address that in this particular part. I have a hard time remembering to advance these things. Okay, so the law started off with the Motor Carrier Act of 1980 and deregulation. And what deregulation did is it basically removed barriers to entry into the industry. I mean, before 1980, you had to sit in front of a board in Washington to get approval to be able to become a carrier, or to get approval to become a broker. And it was a very drawn out process. Well, of course, that doesn't exist today. And frankly, as long as you have the basic requirements met, you can get an authority. Now, it really shouldn't be that easy. There do need to be some level of barriers because scammers have taken advantage of this open industry and have infiltrated it over the course of the last decade. So that's part of the problem is the Motor Carrier Act of 1980, and there are attempts to fix that in Congress now. Uh, the other law that really helped try to enhance things was Public Law 112-141, otherwise known as MAP 21. And MAP 21 was signed into law in July of 2012, which ended a few different practices. One, it ended the practice of what's known as interlining. And interlining was what carriers used to do when they're moving freight from coast to coast. You'd have one carrier book the load from, let's say, Atlanta to Los Angeles. And that carrier would pick up the load and take it to, say, the Mississippi River. And at the Mississippi River, they'd hand it off, take their chunk of the money, hand the rest of the load off to another carrier at the Mississippi River, and then they took it to El Paso. And in El Paso, they handed it off to yet another carrier who then took it all the rest of the way into Los Angeles, and everyone taking their piece along the way. And that was perfectly fine. The only issue with that is an issue of liability. Because the cargo is not moving under a single authority throughout, if there was an accident or something that took place along the way on a different authority, the cargo would not be covered because that carrier was not part of the transportation flow and was not on the rate confirmation. Therefore, insurance isn't going to cover that crap. So the practice of interlining was outlawed as part of MAP 21. It also formalized what broker requirements were supposed to have, including the implementation of the $75,000 bond. Now, many will argue today that the $75,000 bond is not enough. Because let's face it, the purpose of the bond is to make carriers whole if the broker fails to pay. Since there are many brokers out there who are moving a hell of a lot more than $75,000 worth of freight bills, then frankly, it should go up. Now, I do know some of the bigger brokerages out there, some of the megas are actually running bonds upwards of $10 million. That is a bit more appropriate. I'm happy to see that among some of them. And yet some of them are still running 75,000. Like if you all remember, we had a couple of big brokers who suddenly shut down over the last 12 months. And when they shut down with bonds at 75,000. Well, with over a few $1,000,000 in outstanding freight bills, each of those carriers who were on loads for those brokers that shut down, their only source of collection was to go to the bond. Well, when you have $3-4 million worth of loads trying to collect on a $75,000 bond, you're talking at pennies on the dollar, like less than 10 cents on the dollar is how much it actually paid out, because the bond company's only going to pay out the maximum amount, which was 75,000. So it got divvied up among all the carriers. You know, we're looking at you, Convoy. It is important that that bond is in place, and we are hoping that future legislation increases the bond requirements to be relative to the amount of freight that a broker has on the road at any given time. It also formally made the practice of double brokering illegal. Before then, it was just something rude. Now it is actually illegal. And in this instance, the FMCSA actually has the authority to issue civil fines of $10,000 and a revocation of authority if a carrier or a broker is guilty of double brokering. Now, FMCSA feels that they've been blocked in that regard. So they have not conducted any serious enforcement activity, but that is a challenge that's still being played out in court. I believe at the end of the day, we will see FMCSA actually does have that authority, and FMCSA needs to start exercising that authority in order to get this epidemic under control. But when you look at the actions that take place as part of double brokering, there are criminal statutes that can come into play. First is wire fraud. Anytime that you're committing fraud through electronic means, email, over the internet, whatever, it's called wire fraud. And usually we're talking about multiple counts, because in this day and age, double brokering usually involves a scammer who is impersonating both a fake broker and a fake carrier at one point or another. So they're committing fraud in at least two different levels whenever they do a single double brokering attack. So you are talking about multiple counts of wire fraud. And then at the end of the day, they are stealing the entire freight bill. So we also have larceny in that. And in most cases, grand larceny, because it's over $500. So that's 3 felony counts for every time somebody double brokers a load, should we ever find a DA who's willing to prosecute this stuff. Now, Department of Transportation, Department of Justice say that they're unable or unsure how to enforce the criminal law in these cases because of lack of enforcement capability. Okay, that's fine. Talk to your congressman, because they're the only people that can fix that. And it does need to be fixed. Then we deal with, as I was talking about earlier, the internet invasion. And I've got a cat who just really wants to be part of this show, so forgive me. The internet invasion. Oh, a sec, I got a question popping in. How does FMCSA feel they've been blocked from enforcement? Simply challenges in court or other factors? It's multifaceted. There have been challenges in court against the federal government, specifically DOT, enforcing regulations, indicating that they don't have the legal enforcement. I'm trying to remember the legal precedent where that derived from, and I can't remember off the top of my head, but there was a case recently that indicated that the federal government does not have jurisdiction over applying civil penalties, and that is being played out. I disagree with the interpretation of that, but somebody at Department of Transportation gave that interpretation, and that's really where all of that stemmed from. So let me get back into the internet invasion. In 2020 is one of the first times I personally have encountered double brokering. And what you have is you basically have an invasion of actors, bad actors across the internet who are targeting and infiltrating specifically the transportation industry. And this really all started around COVID, because rates were really good during COVID. And because of that, there was opportunity. And the opportunity there to skim off the top, which is the first form of double brokering, was very prevalent and easy to do without detection. So that's really how it all started. So you have crime syndicates and even individuals from a variety of places, including Eastern Europe, India, Pakistan, Southwest Asia, and South America, who began taking exceptional interest in the U.S. transportation system. Now, there are more deep-seated conspiracy theories out there as to why agents out of Eastern Europe are attacking the U.S. transportation industry. Among the most serious of those would be the fact that if the U.S. transportation industry were to shut down, if all the trucks just stopped running for 3 days, grocery stores would be completely empty, hospitals would be out of supplies, and most warehouses would be about empty. We would turn most of the stuff that's sitting in storage, because we operate in a just-in-time supply chain economy. So any disruption to supply chain is going to cause massive problems in the overall U.S. economy. These guys know that. So to be able to cause massive disruptions within the U.S. economy is one of the possible goals as to why some of these agents are out there doing this kind of stuff. However, It's mostly crime syndicates, and they're in it for the money. And if you don't believe me, look at the damage it's done. Okay, 2023 is the first time we got a realistic estimate of how much money double brokering and these scams are costing the economy. And it was over $500 million, 500 to 700 million was the estimate. And last year, 2024, we saw a 600% increase. Now, that 600% increase in fraud, it encompasses not just double brokering, it includes stolen cargo, it includes cargo ransoming, it includes also all varieties of transportation theft. It's kind of crazy. It really is, because this problem is growing at an exponential level. Yet we're not getting buy-in from the federal government in trying to deal with it. So then you have organizations like our Double Broker Bounty Hunter program that are popping up that are trying to engage with the problem directly from a private enterprise standpoint and help, frankly, DOT and FMCSA do their job. You'll see a lot more on stuff like this with other projects that we are working on, including the Freight Fraud Task Force. But I'll get more into stuff like that as we go. Let's talk about the scam and how it's done. So, frankly, it starts off with getting a motor carrier authority, because first off, these scammers have to get their hands on freight. They get their freight from a real broker. So a real broker is the starting point. So these scammers are then getting their own motor carrier authority and booking loads as a carrier. Whether they create a company, get a VIN number, get a DOT inspection, purchase insurance, all the stuff that's necessary to get an authority to begin with, whether or not they go through the legal road of getting an authority or they steal the authority, which could be procuring carriers' documents through phishing schemes, or getting a carrier's DOT PIN number off the dark web and creating a fake MCS 150 update to hijack the authority. And we see that stuff all the time. I'm going to say this several times throughout this entire series. If you've gotten your DOT PIN number before March of 2023, get a new PIN number now, because the DOT PIN numbers that were available in March 2023 have been compromised and are available on the dark web for sale. So pay attention. The last way that they obtain a motor carrier authority is by, frankly, buying an MC. And that happens all the time. There are two companies that we are currently following. That's all they do, is they buy and sell MCs that are going out of business, and then sell that off to somebody. And they don't vet them. They don't make sure that they qualify as a motor carrier. They don't make sure that they legally assume control of an authority. They just buy and sell the numbers. And that's not how it's supposed to be done. If you're doing it the right way, if you're buying an authority, you have to buy the carrier in its entirety, all its assets, all its liabilities, everything. You have to buy the entire company in order to not have to go through all the paperwork through DOT to transfer the authority. And even then, when you buy the whole company, you still have to file an MCS 150 update to update the contact information. So, I mean, there's a lot involved in transferring an authority. And I guarantee these bad guys, they don't care. Once they get their hands on that number, that's all they're doing, is they're out there to scam. Then they have to obtain a freight broker authority, because I can tell, I get a lot of people who sit there and tell me that, John, I've encountered a load that's been triple brokered, quadruple brokered, or whatnot. BS. These guys are very smart and very sophisticated, but they're not that good. I don't know of anyone who is. You guys remember playing telephone in grade school, where the teacher would go to the front of the room and pass a phrase to the first student, and it goes all the way around the classroom to the end. And by the time it gets to the end, the phrase is completely different. Well, it's the same principle. Usually the individual person involved in a load who booked the load with the real broker pretending to be a carrier is usually the exact same guy pretending to be a broker to the real carrier, because the flow of communication has to go through as short a stream as possible, yet maintain a smoke screen in the middle so that the real broker and the real carrier don't know that they're working together. That is the only way the scam works. So there's usually one person in the middle. They have the fake carrier authority or the stolen carrier authority, and they have a fake broker authority. And to get that freight broker authority, again, they create the company, they purchase the bond, and boom, now you've got a broker authority. It's actually very easy to get a broker authority, easier than getting a carrier authority. Or they steal the broker authority, and we see a ton of that going on these days. Usually they'll obtain a copy of a broker's contract off the internet. If perhaps in trying to run legally, they've gotten copies of the documents and are able to use Adobe and doctor up whatever they need to doctor. They would also create similar email accounts that are very similar to what the broker's real email is. We see that a lot. And probably the most popular way of impersonating a broker these days is through phishing scams. I think everyone who's watching has probably seen the email come across from DAT saying, oh, we need to verify your credentials. Guys, it's a scam. DAT doesn't do that by email. Okay, so, somebody, a very young broker who doesn't know better, is going to click on that email and give up their credentials. And once they give up their credentials, it's a cakewalk from there. The scammer then has their fake broker ID, their fake carrier ID, and they got their hands on a load from a real broker. All they got to do now is find a real carrier to move it and then steal the freight bill. It's that simple. And guys, these guys make a ton of money doing this, a ton. You saw the numbers I had in an earlier slide. It is crazy. So that's the very basics of double brokering. We deal with double brokering on a regular basis. We see it happening live on DAT, Truck Stop, all the dang time. I get calls all the time from carriers and brokers who are dealing with double brokering scams. We're happy to help anyone that we can. If you do need help, my contact information is on the screen. Email me at jcantera@vigilanttransport.com. Call me. We also have our show emails for Stop the Scam, our weekly podcast. You can always hit me up, jcantera@stopthescampodcast.com as well. You can even get my co-host if you need to, Caitlin Price at kprice@stopthescampodcast.com. Just a programming note, we are changing our regular time slot for our weekly live show. Stop the Scam is now going to start airing Mondays at 1 p.m. Central Time. That way, we think that we're going to be able to get the lunch crowd a little better. A lot of people, when they get done for the day, the last thing they want to do is hear more about logistics. So we're trying to try the lunch stuff now. See how that works out. And for this coming week, we will have Wendy Buckley of Stars Hazmat coming on and talking to us about hazmat and compliance type issues with regard to fraud in the industry. If there are no other questions, thank you for those who have made questions. Thank you to those who watch. Please make sure you like and subscribe so you can get our future updates. We are going to try to do these live so that way we can answer questions as we go. Part 2 will be out next Thursday. We haven't set the time yet, but as soon as we get the chance, we will get it published. If you need anything else, all you got to do is contact me. Stay safe out there, and whatever you do, don't let scammers take you for a ride. Take care, folks. We will see you again next week.